You remember the fear most. They're wrong. What stays with me isn't the sound of the mountain breaking apart beneath my skis or the pain that followed. It's the weight of another man's arm around my shoulders, steady, calm, human on a day when I should have been completely alone, and the fact that, according to every piece of evidence that exists, he was never there. I wasn't reckless. That's important to say up. I wasn't reckless. That's important to say up front, not to impress anyone, but because it still matters to me. I'd spent over a decade skiing remote terrain across the western United States, Colorado, Wyoming, Montana. I was trained, certified, methodical. I checked weather models obsessively. I read avalanche reports like scripture. I followed protocols most people ignored because they were inconvenient. And I never went out without telling someone exactly where I'd be. The plan that day was simple, a day trip into a familiar range in northern Utah, a few hours from where I lived. I'd skied the zone before, nothing extreme, nothing flashy, just a clean line I'd been saving for the right conditions. The forecast called for light snowfall, nothing alarming. Cold, quiet, manageable. I remember standing at the trailhead just after sunrise, the world hushed beneath a thin veil of falling snow, the kind of morning that makes you feel like you've been granted temporary ownership of the earth. That should have been my first warning. The climb up felt normal at first, slow, deliberate, but halfway up, the wind shifted. Not dramatically, just enough to make me pause. It came from a direction the forecast hadn't predicted, cutting across the slope instead of flowing down it. Visibility started to thin faster than I liked. I told myself the same lie everyone tells themselves in the backcountry, just one run. By the time I reached the top, the snowfall had thickened into something heavier. The sky had flattened into a single gray sheet, swallowing depth and distance. I hesitated, I really did. Then I dropped in. The first section went smoothly. I stayed conservative, making controlled turns, testing the snowpack as I went. About 2/3 of the way down, the mountain made the decision for me. There was no warning sound, no dramatic crack, just a sudden, terrifying realization that the ground beneath me was moving and I wasn't in charge anymore. I was on my side before I could react. The slide wasn't massive. Later, I'd be told it was relatively small, but size doesn't matter when you're inside it. Snow doesn't feel soft when it's carrying you. I tumbled hard, then everything stopped all at once. I lay there, staring up at the sky, trying to convince myself not to move. When I did, pain shot through my left leg so violently it stole the air from my lungs. My skis had released. That was good. One of them, though, was gone somewhere downhill, swallowed by white. I tried to stand. I collapsed immediately. The storm was worsening. Snow was falling thick and fast now, erasing definition, sound, time. My leg couldn't support my weight. Skiing out wasn't an option. Staying put wasn't much better. I remember thinking how strange it was that the mountain looked so peaceful while actively trying to finish me. I secured what gear I could and started moving downhill on foot, using a single pole like a crutch. Every step was agony. Every pause felt dangerous. The cold crept in quietly, like it had all the time in the world. I don't know how long I'd been moving when I heard something behind me. At first, I dismissed it. Wind, snow, my own breathing. Then I heard it again. Someone was moving through the storm. I turned, expecting nothing. Instead, a figure emerged from the snowfall, another skier, descending carefully, deliberately, like he'd known exactly where I'd be. Relief hit me so hard I laughed. He skidded to a stop beside me and pulled his goggles up. He looked normal, mid-30s maybe, weathered face. Calm eyes. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I told him what happened. He didn't hesitate. He stepped in close and let me lean on him, my arm over his shoulder. He was solid, stronger than he looked. We started moving together. And that's when the feeling started. I can't explain it properly. It wasn't fear. It wasn't relief either. It was the sense that something was off, like a word spoken with perfect grammar, but the wrong tone. We talked as we moved about nothing important. Where I was from, where he'd come in from, the snow, the wind. At one point, he said something that stuck with me. "I haven't used my legs in a long time," he said, almost casually. "Feels good to be back on solid ground." I laughed, assuming it was some skiing metaphor I didn't understand. We kept going. I don't know how long we walked like that. Time had lost meaning. I only remember leaning against a tree, closing my eyes for what couldn't have been more than a few seconds. When I opened them, my arm fell through empty air. He was gone. I spun around, panic flaring. There was nowhere for him to go. No slope to disappear down, no trees thick enough to hide a person. I called out. Nothing answered. Then I noticed the snow. There were no tracks, not his. Not beside mine, not leading away. Only my own uneven trail alone. My stomach dropped. The rational part of my brain fought back hard. The storm could have covered them. I could have been disoriented, exhausted, hypothermic, but I remembered his shoulder. The pressure. The way my weight had leaned into him. I don't know how I made it back to my car. I just remember refusing to stop. The hospital confirmed what I already suspected. Severe injury, but not broken. I'd been incredibly lucky. Days later, stuck at home, I couldn't shake the image of the man in the storm. Then I found the article. A local backcountry skier missing, lost in the storm weeks earlier, same range. Same drainage. No body recovered. No photos attached. I stared at the screen for a long time. I still ski, but I never go alone anymore. And every winter, when the snow starts falling heavier than predicted, I think about the man who walked me off the mountain and wonder whether he was ever meant to leave it. People think moving somewhere quiet will fix them. That if you put enough distance between yourself and the noise of the world, your thoughts will finally calm down. That's what I believe too. I moved to northern Montana 6 years ago, chasing isolation like it was medicine. I told everyone it was about work, about cheaper land, about wanting a slower life, but the truth was simpler. I wanted to disappear for a while. No roommates. No family hovering. No one checking in on me every few days asking if I was doing okay. Out there, nobody asked anything. The house I bought sat at the end of a long, unpaved road, surrounded by pine trees and snowdrifts that never fully melted. The nearest town was 20 minutes away on a good day. The nearest neighbor was far enough that you couldn't see their porch light at night. That was perfect. For years, nothing happened. That's what made the night it did happen so much worse. The blizzard rolled in fast. One moment, the sky was just heavy and gray. The next, snow was coming down sideways, wind howling hard enough to rock my truck as I drove home from work. I worked maintenance for a rural hospital, and when the roads started closing, I drove a four-wheel drive pickup and had lived in snow country long enough to respect it but not fear it. That was my mistake. By the time I turned onto my road, visibility had dropped to almost nothing. The wind erased the tire tracks seconds after I made them. When I finally pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking, not from cold, but from relief. The lock was frozen solid. I tried everything, my breath, my gloves, tapping it gently, then harder. Nothing. I went back to the truck to grab tools. But when I tried to reverse out, the tires just spun. I was stuck. The snow was already piling up around the doors. The heater was running, but I knew better than to trust it all night. Gas runs out. Engines fail. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall of white beyond my windshield, before admitting what I didn't want to admit. I needed help. The closest house was about a third of a mile away. That doesn't sound like much until you're walking into a blizzard that feels like it's trying to knock you over. By the time I reached the driveway, my face was numb and my legs burned from pushing through knee-deep snow. The house was small, old, one story. A single yellow porch light flickered above the door. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time, already planning to turn around and head to the next house when the door suddenly flew open. The man standing there didn't smile. He didn't frown either. He just stared at me, eyes wide, like I'd interrupted something important. "Sorry," I said quickly. "My truck's stuck. Lock froze. I just need to wait out the storm." He watched me for a long second too long. "Come in before you freeze." The warmth hit me immediately. So did the smell. Not rotten, not dirty, just stale. The living room was cluttered but clean, old furniture. Heavy curtains drawn tight over the windows. No photos on the walls. No decorations, no TV. Frank sat across from me in a recliner while I thawed out on the couch. He answered my questions politely but vaguely. Lived alone, didn't go into town much, preferred quiet, fair enough. But something was wrong. His eyes never stopped moving. They flicked to the hallway, the ceiling, the corners of the room, like he was listening for something I couldn't hear. At one point, he stopped mid-sentence and just stared past me. I followed his gaze. There was nothing there. He nodded quickly, too quickly. "That's fine," he said. "That's fine." I asked him to turn off the light. He did. But he didn't leave. He stood in the doorway, watching me in the dark. I kept my eyes half closed, pretending to drift off. My heart hammered in my chest until, finally, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. Only then did I breathe. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I started to drift, I'd jolt awake, convinced I'd heard something, scraping, thumping, above me. That made no sense. The house didn't have a second floor. I stared at the ceiling, telling myself it was the storm. Then there was a loud bang so hard it shook dust loose from the light fixture. I sat straight up and saw him. Frank stood in the doorway again, just a few feet away. Before I could speak, he rushed me. We hit the floor hard. He was stronger than he looked. His hands locked around my neck, and his breath came fast and ragged as he muttered under his breath. "You weren't supposed to wake up," he kept saying. "She hates when they wake up." I fought with everything I had. Somehow, I got my knee up, shoved him back, and scrambled to my feet. I didn't grab my boots, didn't grab my phone. I ran. Behind me, he screamed not at me, but at someone else. "I tried," he yelled. "I really tried." The next house saved my life. When I told them where I'd been, the husband went quiet. "Frank's house?" he asked. I nodded. He sighed. "His wife vanished years ago," he said. "Storm like this, they never do. I still live out there. Still drive past that house. The porch light is always on. And sometimes, during heavy snow, I swear I hear something moving on my roof.